What are the most interesting domino effects in history? George Lucas really wanted to make a Howard the Duck movie. And after ROTJ, he had the pull to do it. But Howard the Duck lost George Lucas so much money that he had to sell the animation part of Lucasfilm. He sold it to Steve Jobs. And it later became Pixar. From Wikipedia. This is probably my favorite that escalated quickly. In 1980 AD, Flavius Josephus recorded the first known incident of mooning. Josephus recorded that in the procuratorship of Ventidius Cumanus, 1952 AD. At around the beginning of the First Roman-Jewish War, a soldier in the Roman army mooned Jewish pilgrims at the Jewish temple in Jerusalem who had gathered for Passover, and spake such words as you might expect upon such a posture, causing a riot in which youths threw stones at the soldiers, who then called in reinforcements. The pilgrims panicked, and the ensuing stampede resulted in the death of 10,000 Jews. During the First World War, in an attempt to destabilize the collapsing Russian Empire, the German Empire allowed safe passage for known revolutionary Vladimir I. Lenin from his refuge in Switzerland to the Finland station in St. Petersburg. Roughly 30 years later, Nazi Germany would be beaten into the ground by the armies of the Soviet Union. The nation Lenin had successfully formed before his death. Germans done goofed. Were still fighting over events that can be traced back to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand. Ignoring the fact that it wasn't WWI until we had the second one. There was the Cold War, Korea and Vietnam, and the Israel-Palestine debate, to name a few. Franz Ferdinand's driver taking a wrong turn triggered WW1 and essentially everything after it. If you something slightly more obscure. In Franz Ferdinand's wardrobe there was a shirt that was tightly woven enough to stop the bullet that held him. That was the shirt he was going to wear, but he chose another one last minute for some reason. The fall of the Aztec and Incan empires, caused in part by the conquistadors, led to massive reforestation in areas that were once designated for cities and farmland cleared for crops animals. This led to a massive fall in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which brought about around 200 years of excessively cold winters in Europe, leading to a mini ice age which ended around 1750. Star Trek Voyager was not as well received as previous Star Trek series. In 1997, producers decided to add a new character in an attempt to boost ratings. Actress Jeri Ryan was brought in to play 7 of 9. Jeri's frequent separations from her husband, Jack Ryan, due to her acting schedule, contributed to their decision to divorce in 1999. In 2004, Jack Ryan became the Republican nominee for an open Senate seat in Illinois. During the campaign, the proceedings from Ryan's divorce became public and contained details of his sex life that did not make him look good. The scandal forced Ryan to drop out of the Senate race in July, leaving the GOP time to only find token opposition to Democratic nominee Barack Obama. Obama's landslide victory in the Senate race helped launch him onto the national stage, allowing him to pull off an upset victory in the 2008 Democratic primary and win the presidential election. TLDR: the lackluster writing of Star Trek Voyager helped pave the way for the Obama presidency. A reduced honeybee population creates a domino effect in the food chain. Alfalfa, a crop that is pollinated by honeybees, plays a crucial role in keeping our environment healthy. Researchers have claimed that the extinction of just one animal has the potential to create a domino effect that could result in the extinction of many more species. Because alfalfa is the main food source for dairy cows and a secondary food source for beef cows, sheep and horses, the decline of alfalfa yield could be a devastating blow to the dairy and beef industries. Without enough alfalfa to feed livestock, they could become endangered or even extinct. Domino's pressuring drivers to deliver pizza in 30 minutes or less led to drivers crashing and them suing Domino's, which then removed the 30 minutes or less tag. Literally a domino effect, but with like only 3 dominoes. Genghis Khan's son being an alcoholic saved Europe. Please explain more. A Jedi Khan drank himself to death. and thus all the Mongol forces in Europe, who had penetrated as far as Hungary, were forced to halt their campaigns and return to Mongolia to sort out the question of succession. The Senate of Rome decides to kill the Gracchi for pushing through legislation in favor of land redistribution. Marius then revives this issue to pay his troops back for winning, so they could resettle in Italy, which causes Sulla to start a bloodbath in Rome, killing thousands. Sulla leaves his dictatorship, and Rome goes right back to squabbling between the rich and poor. Julius Caesar takes up the mantle of Marius and the Gracchi again, and succeeds in the reforms. Caesar conquers Gaul. That and his controversial land law causes hardline conservatives to oppose his coming home without being put on trial. Caesar crosses the Rubicon. Pompey goes to Greece. Caesar defeats Pompey. Caesar becomes dictator. The Senate stabs him and flees to Greece. His adopted son Octavian raises an army to fight the assassins. They win. Antony and Octavian go head to head. Octavian wins. Octavian, now Emperor Augustus, has 350,000 troops, and we're having land redistribution if you don't ducking mind. British officers in India during the 18th century were eating quinine powder to treat their malaria. The powder was so bitter they mixed with their club soda. They brought it back to the UK and they started putting it in their gin. Hence gin and tonic. Also resulted the discovery that quinine can be used to treat rheumatic diseases. That's why when you've autoimmune arthritis you get put on antimalarials first, such as hydroxychloroquine. I also think a nice Gant helps when you're flaring. Takes the edge off the pain. As a boy, Satoshi Tajiri liked to run around in fields and meadows and catch and collect different insects. As a young man working for a video game company, Satoshi learned that the fields and meadows he used to play in were being developed for urban purposes. Realizing that many children are never going to have the same experiences as he did, he decided to create a video game that simulates going around in tall grass and catching and collecting bugs. That video game is now known as Pokémon. Columbus discovered the West Indies. Pizarro follow him in South America. Spain bring potatoes to Europe. It becomes the main food of poor people in Ireland. The Irish potato famine in 1845 lead to a massive migration to the EUA. The Kennedy family arrive in 1849. The moon in 1969. The sack of Rome in 1527. The Holy Roman Empire was at war with a coalition that included France, a few Italian states, and the Pope. The Emperor, Charles V, hired mercenaries to bolster his numbers. But when he failed to pay them in time, they mutinied. The mercenaries sacked Rome and captured the Pope. Eventually the war ended and Charles gained a lot of control over the church. Some years later in 1530, Charles directed the Pope to not annul the marriage between his beloved aunt, Catherine of Aragon, and her husband. Her husband was Henry VIII of England. Henry decided to ignore the Pope's decision, thus kicking off the English Reformation. In 2007, the Writers Guild of America went on strike, leaving TV and movies without any writers for 4 months. This led to TV studios relying on shows that didn't require writing. Talk shows, game shows, and reality shows, for example. NBC decided that in order to maximize ratings, they'd get celebrities to compete in one of their reality shows that had been sinking in the ratings. And so The Celebrity Apprentice premiered in January 2008. The season got ratings more than twice as high as the previous one, and led to host Donald Trump being a mainstay of network TV until February 2015. On the 16th of June 2015, Donald Trump announced his candidacy for President of the United States. TLDR, if producers had just paid the writers, Donald Trump wouldn't have been the host of one of the most popular shows on TV for 7 years and probably wouldn't be president. I saw Stan tell this story in a video on Instagram or Reddit the other day. Stanley wanted to create a superhero based on a spider who was also a teenager. His boss at the time told him no because no one liked spiders, and according to him everyone wanted their superheroes to be adults. When a series they were working on was ending, they threw together one-off stories to close out the book because it wouldn't have another issue. Stan put his previously rejected story in that final issue. The book. Amazing Fantasy number 15. The debut of Spider-Man. How China didn't allow any girls to be born for generations and now all of China is dudes who can't get laid. Seriously mind-boggling, no one had the foresight on this. Gonna take this very literally. Domino Day 2009. In the Netherlands we used to have a yearly event where the goal was to break the world record for the most amount of dominoes toppled in one run. Sadly the event lost funding. 2009 was the last time and has been dead since then. But it is still amazing to watch. You can find almost every year on YouTube. Apparently the diameter of NASA rocket boosters are that way because of the width of modern roads. Which are that way because it's as wide as two horses. Which is how the width of roads have been determined since the ancient Romans or something like that. The size of some rocket boosters are directly traced back to the width of horses in ancient Rome. This is second-hand knowledge. And I'm probably misremembering. Alfred the Great of England defeated a large army of Vikings. Some settled down in England. But others left and started attacking France. This was irritating to the French king, so he gave them land to stop attacking. Normandy. When my dad married my stepmom and it dominoed into me being hit with a vacuum cleaner from across the living room like she practiced the art of throwing household appliances for 20 years with the Shaolin monks. In WWI. An American soldier had the life of a German soldier in his hands. He decided to spare him and let him live. That German soldier became the cause of the Holocaust, causing over 11 million deaths. The soldier was Adolf Hitler. Not sure if it's the most interesting, but WWI started from the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand of Austria. Austria took too long to make the decision to go to war with Serbia, country of the assassination. Thus by the time they attacked, most of Europe didn't support it except Germany, who had a treaty with Austria to support any war Austria engaged in. Russia had to defend Serbia since it was technically owned by them. Russia also had treaties with England and France to aid its military in the event of war, thus starting WWI and leading to Germany's defeat. The Treaty of Versailles diminished Germany's power and national pride, giving Adolf Hitler the opportunity to rise to power and start WWI while becoming allies with Italy and Japan. Japan decided to attack the USA, pulling one of the world's two superpowers into the war. After the defeat of Nazi Germany, the USA bombs Japan and forced a change in the Japanese economy and government. This change ended up rapidly advancing Japan's technology, eventually creating an advanced society that today provides the world with many efficient household products. Probably one of the most unexpected domino effects in history. Oh, and then there's the rule of Julius Caesar. But you all know how that goes. French Revolution caused a few domino effects in Ireland. It inspired Wolfe Tone to start the 1798 rebellion, which inspired the 1916 Easter Rising, which in result led to the War of Independence, the Anglo-Irish Treaty M, the Civil War, the partition of Ireland, the Troubles, and eventually my history teacher having the sheet kicked into him in Northern Ireland. WW2 lead to the space race. This led humans to see how badly pollution and human actions were affecting the planet. We would be at least a decade behind in many fields of science without satellites. A man who owned a general store in the North during the American Civil War made and sold fake Confederacy money. It had the name of his business on it, and it said it wasn't real money on the bottom. Northern soldiers would cut off his business info and used it as real currency in the South. This led to an economic crisis in the South. It made it hard to know which bills were real or fake. It made it hard for them to buy supplies. This guy destroyed the economy and helped the North win the war.